Sven, in Washington, you're live with Eric and Thomas. What would you like to talk about today?
Good evening. Yeah, I got a call earlier. You had mistaken that somebody said they were an agnostic theist, and that is definitely what I define as. And I found it interesting that towards the end you were going towards, what in our belief can we say that convinces you? But when someone has a personal God, it's because verificationism isn't convincing to us of why the soul or morals or whatever the metaphysical quandary that we're having in our psychology. And so I just don't know, I don't think anybody with their own spiritual belief in an individual God is trying to convince anybody, because we're not using verificationism or the scientific method to ground our beliefs in the supernatural.
What are you using, and why do you think it's a good methodology?
I think it's a good methodology because not having morality, not being an objective thing, does not sit well with my psychology and spirals me down like moral relativism. Just like studying it drives me to depression and nihilism.
Are there any other uncomfortable truths that you deny simply because they're uncomfortable?
Nothing else drives me towards depression that I would need to.
Well,
verificationism.
So what's interesting is I've got a good amount of family in Germany, and as a child, I think the very first time that I went to Germany as a kid, it was not long after the wall came down, and just moving over into East Germany felt like the color got sucked out of the world, and learning as a child about the Holocaust, was something that was really, really heavy and very, very personal and upfront, because I'd seen a lot of, and been taken to a lot of those places. But to say it makes me incredibly depressed to think of and recognize that, there was an attempted genocide. I don't think I could possibly say, well, then it didn't happen. I know that some people might.
But you could say that a wicked power caused it and not just a single human.
I don't know how that applies, though. We're in talking about the methodology. You said that you are sticking to the idea that morality is objective because the contrary makes you feel uncomfortable. So I think I'm giving an example of somebody saying,
logical sense to me.
"Oh, okay, well, that's different. That's actually that's different." Something. So we can talk about logical sense, but it making me uncomfortable. The example I was going to say is, okay. Holocaust sounds really, really bad, makes me depressed, therefore the Holocaust didn't happen, which is obviously a horrible, but it's just applying that kind of methodology. So what doesn't make logical sense about, walk us through, how did you get there?
I would just say no logic, including verificationism or epistemology or skepticism, has convinced me that there's no morality, that not owning slaves or that genocide are just subjective truth to somebody.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't.
Not really.
Doesn't add up to me that saving 100 people is just as morally correct as committing genocide, if moral is relative to the people. Then a tribe is able to. I understand that we deal with subjective morality in the universe that we have now, but there is just something that even humanists follow that leads us towards labeling well-being as the logical sense of, that's what makes the most moral sense to humanists, is to value well-being. There's no science that says well-being is the foundation of morality.
Well, agreed, and that's because morality is something that we are creating, right? It's something that we are deciding upon together. So can I zoom out just a little bit, because I think zooming out might help. What makes a thing objective? Like, let's say you're absolutely right, and morality is objective. What makes it objective? Like, what is it? A God content? Like, what is it that makes something objective?
This is where we're not going to be able to see eye to eye, because this is where I don't see verificationism coming in handy to say what makes morality objective, because that would.
But I mean, by definition, how would you define it?
Yeah.
Like we're not asking for verification right now. We're just asking for a
How would I
definition.
define objective morality?
Yeah.
I would define it as any action taken that I guess improves the one soul and the collective consciousness soul as a whole, improving that.
So, isn't that still subjective? You're subjectively.
Like I said, in this world, we're saying we deal with subjectiveness because it is our personal thing.
Okay.
And that's why
It sounds like he defined utilitarianism, though. He's like, it increases the, what was it? How did he word it? The well-being of our soul or something like that?
Of the collective.
Or collective soul?
And the collective consciousness. Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it sounds like you're creating a moral framework very similar to utilitarianism, where it's basically it's very consequentialist. All right, this action improved our collective soul well-being. This action didn't, therefore this one's moral. Well, you can have a similar moral framework that is purely based off of utility and end results. Is it the best one? You could argue for and against it, but it sounds really similar, and I'm not really sure how that's different from other moral frameworks that have been put forth throughout history.
Oh, I would agree with you. Most people you will find will align with utilitarianism. It just doesn't feel like, it doesn't seem like that is a.
It still feels subjective to me.
Right, it is subjective because we are humans and we all have our own beliefs.
Okay, but you said you don't believe in subjective morality.
Spiritual.
So
Pure. What pure morality is, I believe, is objective.
Okay, so pure morality is objective. That's where you're going with this. I'm trying to follow because it feels real fuzzy here, and I'm trying to pin down so that I can understand what you're saying. I want to understand you here, man. What is objective? And how is it objective? Why is it objective?
It would, I guess, objective because it's.
Hello?
No, you have me stumped. I'm trying to think. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Actually, that is an incredibly honest response. What I would say is you need to give yourself credit. That we as a species have created these objectives because we're geared towards survival. And because of that, because we're a social species that's geared towards survival, those objectives that we create are going to line up with them. And I think that's just an observation of what we see. And so while I'm bringing out a causal link, or not a causal, a correlation, I think that's a good framework. I mean, understanding that something is subjective may feel uncomfortable, but I don't know how we can get anywhere else. Like, let's say you were to convince us that a God existed and God wanted us all to stand on our left foot and dance, hop around for a little bit, right? Just because you could convince us of that, right? And you were to say, objectively, everybody should be hopping on their left foot. Well, isn't that just God's subjective decision, right? If God tells you to do something, then all you did is you just backed it up a step, and now it's God's subjective decision. I don't know where that objective can actually exist.
That's why I said I'm an agnostic theist, because I don't believe anybody can claim to know that one God exists that these moralities lie.
Okay, then
it's not a God that set them. It's a collective thing. It's morality is part of the collective consciousness of souls that we are trying to improve.
Why do you need consciousness, though, for morality to exist? And in a sense that, I'm backing away from. I hate the way that I worded that just now, because my mind is going a million different ways, and a lot of times, like what I hear put forth is an argument for morality that it has to be objective. That if it's just subject to our every whim, it can come and go, and we can believe in whatever. So we need to have God make it objective. Well, but then what makes it objective if it's God's, dictate? Isn't it subjective to God's, ideas and stuff? And they're like, well, but God is good. It's a part of the fabric of the universe. It's built in and it's unchangeable like math. Okay, well, if it's built into the fabric of the universe, then why does it have to be conscious if it's just all around us? If it's, and I might even go so far as to say that it's not built into the universe, but if we're going to survive, there are certain natural selective pressures towards moral societies or towards societies that don't just cannibalize their own and don't just kill their own, because the ones that do get wiped out and slaughtered. So is that objective? It's not written by anyone. It's not subject to our whims, but it's just a natural pull that's kind of a part of the universe, but it doesn't require consciousness. It doesn't require God for these pressures to exist.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say when you said that morality is part of the collective consciousness. And in a way, it's like, yeah, all of us together, like we form these moral frameworks that some work better than others and some don't work at all. So in that way, it's like, yeah, it is that morality requires our conscious contributions. But
I have such weird baggage with the word collective consciousness because I tried to I really thought that everybody was psychically linked. But
yeah, when I hear that, I think of like, oh, it's in the Akashic records and it's this consciousness that we all tap into. And it's, I don't like it for that reason. But in terms of all of the things that we know individually, putting our ideas together.
Yeah. But if that is something that you believe, I'd love for you to call in another time because that's a really, really fun conversation to have.
Oh, definitely. And I don't want to take up too much time. We're going towards the end of the show, but I just want to say it is a matter of verificationism will not lead spiritual people away from their spiritual beliefs. That's why street epistemology, it always ends to, this is just how I feel, because the feeling is not going to be overridden by verificationism for large parts of humanity.
I want to pick at that because I want to find out more about that. But unfortunately, this is not the venue, especially with as much time as we've had on the call. What I do suggest, though, is check out, I did a 3-part discussion with Dr. Randall Rouser on objective morality. And that might be worth taking a look at, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Where can people find that?
Thank you so much. Always enjoying the show.
What's your channel called?
It's YouTube. Just look for Eric D. Murphy on YouTube.
Okay.
All right. Bye.